खाएगा।
वेलकम टू पाकिस्तानी फादर एंड सन रिएक्शन में। उम्मीद करता हूं आप खैरियत से होंगे, जाओगे, खुश होंगे। आप
यार मेरा नाम वजाहत है।
नाना
यार
जी।
भाई साहब, आज वो चीज भारत के अंदर हुई है जो यकीन मानो पाकिस्तान आज 80 साल से तरसता आ रहा है। भारत में एक फॉरेनर आया है जो दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा व्लॉगर है, और भाई साहब उसने जब बांग्लादेश के भारत के टेक कैपिटल बेंगलुरु को देखा तो उसके होश उड़ गए कि क्या ये वाकया इंडिया ही है।
अच्छा,
उसको बिलीव नहीं हो रहा कि ये क्या इंडिया है।
क्या बोल रहे हो यार?
भाई वही तो वाच करते हैं, कौन ऑन करते हैं भाई। ये तो रिएक्शन उसका जब वो भारत में आया है उसका देखेंगे तो तभी
बिल्कुल,
पता
बिल्कुल।
लगेगा। कौन ऑन करते स्टार्ट।
Hey, I spent about 3 weeks in Bangalore, the tech capital of India, to see what both life and tech is like here.
Bangalore is famous for its startups, so I visited probably India's most interesting electric motorbike factory. I visited a hospital built by a tech startup. I tried shopping for an electric car made in India. I met the YouTuber Bangawalks to talk about urbanism. I rode all 3 metro lines and a few buses. I tried every app that I could. I discovered one of the world's best digital payment systems. And since India and the EU have just signed a historic new trade deal, I also explored what changes that will bring, especially to India's unique car and motorbike market.
This is my third such travel tech vlog video. The first 2 were some of my best received videos ever, so I hope you enjoy watching this as much as I enjoyed making them.
बहुत बड़ा ब्लॉगर है।
This video was sponsored by Brilliant. I first visited Bangalore many years ago when I worked for Oppo, where I did launch events for them all over the world for new phones. I immediately loved the kind of relaxed vibe of the city, coupled with its dense tree cover and startup culture. And so for this year's winter getaway, I decided to spend 3 weeks exploring Bangalore in much more detail and to show it to you through the eyes of a tech enthusiast. As always, let's start with getting to the city, which for me happened through Bangalore's airport. This was immediately an almost inexplicably premium experience. The whole terminal building was covered in this warm, sort of wooden finish. There's loads of vegetation and even multiple waterfalls woven throughout the space. Everything feels much more fancy than almost any other part of India that I visited. And this airport building wouldn't feel out of place in Dubai or in Singapore. Now, a metro line is being built to connect the airport to the city right now, which is one of the 2 lines that are under construction, but it won't be finished until at least the next year. Meanwhile, there are 3 other lines in operation right now, plus 3 more that are approved for the future, so Bangalore should have at least 8 lines within the next few years, along with a bunch of suburban rail lines too. That's going to then start approaching a really good network, though seeing Chinese and Japanese cities the size of Bangalore, I think the city will probably want to double that eventually too. Anyway, I tried all 3 existing lines and I found that even as they are, they were an absolute godsend as they allowed us to zip past the city's frequently clogged roads. In Bangalore, the metro goes both overground and underground, and while I didn't want to film when there were too many people around, I did see it get quite packed during rush hours. The metro lines were built in part in cooperation with Japan, who provided loans and supplied key components and provided technical expertise too, while China also became a serious supplier, especially on the new yellow line, where the rolling stock is Chinese. In general, Bangalore clearly has the beginnings of a really nice system, though for now I do have some complaints. First, the frequency is just pretty low as there's a minimum of 10 minutes between trains. That's just not great. Second, and this is sadly a thing that I noticed in many other parts of the country too, some of the facilities already looked fairly busted even though they weren't even all that old. I've seen Chinese and Japanese systems twice as old that were in much better shape, and the locals I've talked to confirm that there's often not a strong culture of maintenance once a project is built. That will hopefully improve eventually, though again the network is promising overall. Next up, we take buses. The city has a vast network of them, and they are clearly the backbone of the public transportation infrastructure. Interestingly, about a quarter of the ones that I saw were actually electric and fairly new, while the rest ranged from fairly nice to positively ancient. I used an app to buy my tickets, which was convenient, and overall the experience was fairly nice. The biggest problem for buses by far though is that they're stuck in the same terrible traffic as everyone else. There are virtually no bus lanes, and the locals told me that when the city decided to make them, they were simply ignored by drivers, so they have essentially just given up on the concept for now. I think that's a huge missed opportunity, as a bus network with good priority can be faster than driving, and it can also move as many people as a metro system, but it also costs way less to build, while it also has the nice side benefit of giving emergency vehicles a fast lane as well, so they're not stuck in traffic traffic like everyone else as they are right now. Anyway, you might have already noticed that the buses are typically made by local brands like Tata and Switch, which brings me to perhaps my biggest area of fascination in Bangalore, which are cars and motorbikes. Because yes, India in many ways has historically been an almost completely isolated market from the rest of the world for these vehicles, and that is just on the verge of changing now, with huge ramifications for both Indians and also much of the rest of the world. See, as soon as you step foot in India, you'll notice that cars here are a little different. First, there are local brands like Tata and Mahindra, which are extremely popular here but are only really present in a few other markets abroad. And second, while many international brands are present here, their model selection is often either very limited or they actually have unique models that are made primarily for the India market. This is because India has traditionally been a very protectionist market, with cars, for example, receiving import duties of something like 60 to 100%. This effectively creates a two-tiered car system. The really expensive models are actually imported anyway, as local production just isn't economical, which makes these cars often twice as expensive as the ones they are abroad. Meanwhile, a ton of other companies such as Suzuki, Hyundai, Renault, etc. have all set up huge local production lines, but then these are uniquely catering to local preferences. India, for example, has preferential tax rates for short cars, which makes short but tall models very popular here. And also EVs are an interesting case. While countrywide, I've heard figures such as 3 to 4% being the EV penetration rate, here in Bangalore it is clearly much higher. I think maybe 5 to 10% of the cars that I've seen on the road were actually electric, but I haven't seen a single Tesla and no Chinese brands either besides MG. Due to political tensions, Chinese brands have simply had a very difficult time getting the green light to produce cars in the country, with the one exception being MG, though they too had to sell the majority of their shares in their local Indian company to local business partners, making this technically an Indian company. The other two EV brands by far are Tata and Mahindra, both of which are Indian. Now, they do import many key components, for example, from China, plus some of their designs are licensed from foreign models too, but the final assembly is done here, and I actually went car shopping to see what they're like. Now, I don't actually own a car, and I've never bought one, so I'm perhaps not the best judge, but the interior seemed pretty nice to me, and the prices, which range from about 20,000 to 40,000 USD for an electric SUV, seem pretty reasonable to me too. The big trade deal between India and the EU will gradually lower tariffs on imported cars pretty massively, along with some other previously protected categories, and this means foreign brands will be able to import cars made in the EU at much lower rates. This will likely make many new models available in the country, and I wonder if Chinese brands such as BYD that have now set up manufacturing plants in the EU will also be able to enter the Indian market through this avenue. Anyway, the trade deal will shake things up for sure. But then at least as important to Indians as their cars are their motorbikes and their scooters, and Bangalore is actually home to multiple of the country's most successful startups in this area, like Aether and Ultraviolet. I randomly asked the latter if I could visit their factory, which they were nice enough to agree to, and I also get to chat to Narayan, their CEO. Now, this company is mostly focused on the higher performance electric bikes rather than the scooters that most people here ride. The co-founders have backgrounds in companies like Volkswagen, and their backers include big names like Qualcomm, and while as a non-biker I find it hard to give a completely comprehensive opinion, I did find a few things very interesting. First is that they claim that almost all of their components, from their tires to their frames, are produced in India. The only major exceptions are the individual battery cells themselves, plus some of the chips and the ICs. But then the second reason that I was interested in them is that they actually develop many of their own technologies on top of these. So the final battery pack, including the battery management system, the cooling setup and all, is all a complete own design, and they were also very proud about being able to make it air-cooled at this performance level. I actually saw the packs being made myself, but was sadly not allowed to capture that process on camera.
So inside this black box is where the batteries actually get assembled. As you can see, battery assembly line. I was able to walk through that with the founder and he explained everything to me, but I can't take you inside.
And meanwhile, also a complete own development are things like this thing.
So this is the onboard charger that I was talking about. This today is the world's most power dense air-cooled charger for motorcycles. And with this on the vehicle, all you need is a simple cable that plugs into any publicly available wall socket for charging.
So this is here built into the bike, so you don't need to have a wall box. It works directly with just a cable.
And then there's this, a self-developed adapter that lets you plug your e-bike into any charger made for cars. That's pretty convenient. Or there's also a radar that they built into their newest model. It's attached here in the back, and then you get these yellow or red warning signs on both the screens and on the mirrors when something approaches you from behind or if something pops up in your blind spot. It's kind of like what you have with cars. Then there are many other smart connected features, but my favorite was perhaps the inclusion of a small Indian flag equivalent to what you'd see on Italian bikes perhaps. I really like that they're embracing their heritage. In fact, they actually export their bikes to 10 different European countries. Now, India and the EU have agreed to a framework of a deal for vehicle exports, but the details specifically impacting two-wheelers aren't quite finalized yet. But from what I've been told, still Ultraviolet hopes that the tariffs that they have to pay when exporting to the EU will be lowered too, and so this trade deal would make their expansion to the EU easier as well. And by the way, I was also taken on a test ride, which was, yes, slightly terrifying as almost all traffic in Bangalore has been, but it was also quite fun, and just like almost everyone else that I've met in Bangalore, the team was super nice and friendly. Of course, the friendliest group of people that I met in the city were perhaps my own viewers, believe it or not, because I held a small meetup and plenty of fellow tech enthusiasts showed up. We just met in a park for a few hours and I had a great time nerding out with many of them. India in general has a very high concentration of people who really care about smartphones and other similar tech, and so you see tech brands like Samsung taking retail very seriously here. Typical enthusiast brands like OnePlus and Nothing are doing exceptionally well in the country too, and Nothing had just opened their first ever retail location outside of London right here in Bengaluru just this month too.
इधर हुई है वीडियो खत्म भाई साहब देखा किस तरह के लेवल के इसने भारत के बारे में तारीफ
यार हर चीज पे रिसर्च की, हर चीज की जगह पे गए।
3 हफ्ते रिसर्च करने के बाद वो इस पॉइंट पे पहुंचा।
आप अंदाजा लगा
भाई कहता है ये तो मेन अड्डा है भाई भारत का, ये जो स्टार्टअप्स निकल रहे हैं
हाँ,
बेंगलुरु तो
खाली तो इसका बेंगलुरु का विजिट है, वो देख रहे कि उन्हें पांव तले जमीन निकल गई कि इंडिया ने बनाया क्या है यार।
स्टार्टअप्स का मेन अड्डा इस टाइम बेंगलुरु बना हुआ है। देखो कोई पॉइंट्स जो उसने उठाए हैं कि हाँ बस के लिए अलग लाइन होनी चाहिए, एम्बुलेंसेस के लिए अलग होना चाहिए, वाक्य में होनी चाहिए। देखो अभी भारत जिस चीज पे रास्ते पे चल रहा है, ठीक है ना, आने वाले 2-3-4 सालों में तुम लोग देख लेना कि एम्बुलेंस और बसेस के लिए एक अलग लाइन होगी वहां शहरों के, क्योंकि ट्रैफिक बढ़ रहा है, रोड्स वगैरह निकालने हैं, सब कुछ करना है। तो ये भारत की सरकार 100% इस पे वर्क कर रही है।
ये आपको तो साल 2 चीज में क्लियर हो जाएगा इंडिया, ये मेरी बात याद है। ये इस पे वर्क इंडिया ने शुरू किया हुआ है ना। हाँ, ये बसों के लिए अलग, ट्रकों के लिए अलग,
वही ना। और जहां तक बात है बकाया चीजों की, बाइकों की फैक्ट्री में गया इसके तो जब उधर बड़े बड़े ब्रांड्स देखे इसने तो कहता यार क्या बना हुआ, इधर लोकली मैन्युफैक्चर हो रहे हैं भाई साहब भारत के अंदर।
यार वजह देख लेना, महिंद्रा की फैक्ट्री में गई, महिंद्रा की शोरूम में गई, बाइकों की शोरूम में गई, टाटा के गई उधर।
भाई वो उधर हैरान हुआ है कि उसने तकरीबन कहता है भारत के अंदर इस टाइम 10% इलेक्ट्रिक कार्स चलना शुरू हो गए, लेकिन कहता है यार जो भी देखी भारत के अपने ब्रांड की थी, कोई बाहर की नहीं थी। टाटा या चाइनीज कंपनियों पे वो निर्भर नहीं है, वो भारतीय कंपनियों पे।
यार तो ये पता महिंद्रा भी इलेक्ट्रिक कारें बना रहा है, टाटा जी भी महिंद्रा कारें बना रहे हैं। फिर तो ये पता है कि इंडिया से अपने देश की चीजें यूज करते हैं, वो बाहर देशों की चीजें
यार जब अच्छी चीज मिल रही है तो वो क्यों नहीं यूज करते?
हाँ, बाहर की तेज चीजें थी, महंगी भी है ना वजह। तो टाटा की चीजें भी सस्ती, महिंद्रा की चीजें टैक्स भी कम है उधर, गाड़ी भी वो उसके पैरे तो जमीन निकल गया भाई। हर चीज भी रिसर्च उसने किया।
और भाई जिस चीज में उसने रिसर्च की है, देखो कुछ चीजों को परफेक्ट होने में टाइम लगता है, लेकिन उसको 80% चीजें उधर परफेक्ट लगी हैं।
बिल्कुल।
कहते हैं यार जो एक बड़े इंटरनेशनल वीआईपी देश के अंदर जो चीजें होनी चाहिए वो यहाँ पर है।
बिल्कुल। और गई उधर अपने रेल पे उसने ना किए हुए
मेट्रो तो गया है,
मेट्रो पे गया, मेट्रो अंडरग्राउंड मेट्रो पे बैठे ही वो तो दंग ही रह गई, बोलते ये क्या हुआ इंडिया ने बनाया हुआ, जो अंडरग्राउंड उन्होंने बनाई है। ये पिछले दिनों मोदी जी ने इफ्तिताह भी उसका किया था
ना। तो भाई आपके क्या थॉट है, जो अंग्रेज भी रह गया है दंग, इधर ही वीडियो तुम करते